What if I tell you that one of the most commonly prescribed medication that are used worldwide carries a higher risk of death compared to smoking? Sounds extreme, but prescription strength hypnotics, the very pill that people are prescribed for a good night's sleep, are carrying a dramatically higher rate of death, even in young and healthy adults. I'm Dr. Wei, a family doctor and lifestyle medicine physician based here in the UK. And today I'm going to tell you why that sleeping tablets are more harmful than you think. So what are the hypnotic medications? The medications for sleep used worldwide may vary by country, but the common medications that are often used are zopiclone, zolpidem, temazepam are amongst the common ones. These medications are often controlled medications because of the risk of abuse and addiction. However, they are still amongst the most commonly prescribed medications in the world. A landmark study that's published in the BMJ has revealed something shocking. People prescribed this medication carry a 4.6 times higher risk of death in over just 2.5 years compared to people who didn't take them. And here we are talking about young and fit adults between the age 18 and 55. Let me say that again. 4.6 times higher risk of death, even when they adjusted for other health circumstances. And it gets worse. There's a clear dose-response effect. The more frequently you use the sleeping pills, the higher the risk of death. Looking at the data, the highest users had 5.3 times risk of death for all hypnotics, 5.7 times the risk with zolpidem, and 6.6 times risk with temazepam. The same top use group was also 35% more likely to develop a new major cancer. But what's most startling really from this study is that even when you don't use it very often, so the low use groups also carry an increased risk of death. According to the study, even people who took fewer than 18 pills per year had a 3.6-fold increase in risk of death. That's right, that's less than 2 pills a month. And you're still at higher risk of death compared to people who don't use any sleeping tablets. Positive psychology often teach us how habits can shape our health in a good way. But here is where medicine shows us the flip side. According to the researchers from the study, they have identified a few pathways. The first reason is the increased risk of overdose. Often the use of hypnotics increase the risk of mixed drug overdose, for example, mixing with alcohol or with opiates medication. And it's not hard to imagine how these situations can occur. Somebody who has chronic back pain, who's being prescribed tramadol or fentanyl. Somebody who has depression or anxiety, who is struggling to sleep, but also have an issue with alcohol overuse. And not to mention, these hypnotics themselves are often linked with increased risk of mental health conditions like depression. There are randomized control trials that show hypnotics increase incidence of depression. And there are non-randomized studies that links hypnotics use to increase risk of suicide. And that is even when the confounders like depression's direct effects are being controlled for. Another cause that was mentioned in the study is that some patients may develop dangerous nighttime behaviors. For example, sleepwalking, night eating syndromes. These can cause injuries that are intended for, obesity as a result of the nighttime eating, and often it can lead to various more serious consequences. The last cause that was mentioned in the study is that the hypnotics can lead to increased reflux, so gut reflux syndrome, and it can lead to problem with sleep because usually these reflux can cause more problems, more stomach pains and heartburns when people lie down. And obviously that can happen when they go to sleep. Not to mention the long-term effect of having chronic acid reflux on the gut. You might say, well, these are correlations, they are not causations, but sleeping tablets, they can help me getting a good night's sleep, and that solves the problem that I have immediately. So I'd rather not worry about what the long-term consequences might be, because I want to solve the problem now. Well, here is where it gets counterintuitive. Hypnotics don't actually solve your sleeping problem. It doesn't actually promote natural sleep. They activate the sleep pathway, which means that they make you go to sleep, but they don't actually activate all the restorative pathways that comes with natural sleep. Even worse, they reinforce the idea that you will need these tablets in order to get sleep. So you become more dependent on these pills. Many people with insomnia experience something called crash night, which means that on day 1 and 2, they have really bad sleep. They're struggling to go to bed, or they're waking up frequently during the night. But then on day 3 and 4, they get really deep, really nice, good quality sleep. This pattern naturally happens in insomnia, with or without medication. But if somebody struggles with sleep in the first 2 nights, then on the 3rd night they had enough. They said, okay, I'm going to take some sleeping tablets. And then they have a very restorative, deep sleep. Then that's the natural association that your brain will start to make. Hey, I take the tablets, I had a really great sleep. The tablet must have worked. And as it's being repeated, this reinforces dependency, even though the pill didn't actually fix your underlying problem. So, what's the takeaway here? The data is very clear. Prescription strength hypnotics increase the risk of death through many different causes. Depression, suicide, overdose, falls, motor vehicle accidents, sleep apnea, cancer. And most important of all, they don't actually fix your sleep problem. They put a plaster on the sleep problem and hoping that it will go away. But actually, in the long term, it can lead to worsening of the insomnia. So, what are the solutions to your sleep problem? The good news, most chronic insomnia can be solved with consistent and long-term lifestyle and behavioral approaches that are evidence-based to show that it can treat and are very effective at treating chronic insomnia. We can cover it in a different video, but there are many evidence-based approaches, but I tend to think of it more from addressing the initial cause that may be depression, anxiety, stress related to work or home life that are still ruminating in the background, and to address those issues so that it doesn't continue to trigger issues with sleep. Putting that on one side, specifically focusing on chronic insomnia, the most important and also the only treatment that has been shown to be effective at treating chronic insomnia in the long term is CBT for insomnia. I will cover CBTI in another video, but this is a highly effective method for treating chronic insomnia through reprogramming the brain system that have led to insomnia to develop in the first place. So it fixes the mental habit, the behavioral pattern, the circadian disruption that have managed to keep insomnia alive. And this is a very good way to help people treating insomnia and stopping and coming off sleeping medications safely. There are other strategies that are also very useful at fixing and treating issues with sleep. For example, being consistent with keeping the sleep-wake cycle and keeping a healthy and regular circadian rhythm. Fixing the mental fixations related to sleep so that by reducing that mental fixations, you're able to also reduce the sleep effort. Being exposed to the light at the right time and also not expose yourself to the light at the right time is also equally important. Exercise. Exercise is one of the best ways to build that sleep drive throughout the day and allow you to remain active and alert, full of energy, in preparations for a good night's sleep. The other thing that's important to mention is making sure that if there's any issues with alcohol use or stimulants use, those needs to be addressed in the right way. I hope today that I have managed to convince you that sleeping tablet is not the long-term solution for your problem of sleep. I get it. Having issues with getting a good night's sleep and feeling tired and exhausted the next day is so frustrating for people. But there are safer and more healthier solutions to this problem. You can make a healthier and safer choices in fixing your sleep. If you want a deep dive into more natural sleep solutions, then please hit subscribe and let's fix sleep the right way.